Hello and welcome to the Nurse's Brain. I'm Victory and the face behind the Nurse's Brain. And last week we did have a lot of conversation around the skeletal system or skeletal muscular system, which reminding you is the framework of the body. And I understand how complex this can be and how difficult it can be to understand. So today I'm going to be taking you on a tour through a physical skeleton and identifying sections of the skeletal system, just maybe to be easier for you to comprehend. Let's go. All right, for context or structure, I'm going to call this guy here Bob. Bob is going to be my illustration today. And Bob, do you consent to me using you as an illustration? Yeah. So Bob consents. So this is a real skeleton. And if you remember what we're talking about, this is the framework of the body that makes up the skeletal system. So just a little bit of an overview. We talked about various cavities of the body. This will be the cranial bit, which is the cranial cavity we talked about. And then if we go to the back, here will be the vertebra. Yep. And then this bit where we've got the chest wall and all that will be the thorax or thoracic cavity. And then we've got this empty spacey bit in here which forms the abdominal cavity. And this is the part we've not been able to conceptualize a lot. This will be the pelvic cavities. And then we've got other aspects of the skeletal system that would form the limbs. So these are the arm bones. I'm talking the humerus, which is the forearm, and then we've got the lower arm bit, which is made up by the ulna and the radius, and then we've got the bones of the palm as well, which obviously makes up the carpals, metacarpals, and then the phalanges, which makes up the finger bones. We come down to the lower extremities, and we've got the femur, which is the thigh bone. That's the head fit into the glenoid cavity of the pelvic cavity to form the hip joint. Yeah, and then we've got the femur, the shaft of the femur connected to the lower part of the lower limb, and this space here is where we would have the patella, which is basically the knee bones, and then we've got the tibia and the fibula, and we've got the foot bones, which are made of the carpals, the metacarpals, and obviously the phalanges. So that's the overview structure of the skeletal system, but let's look at it a bit more in depth. So remember when we talked about the head bones being made up of the cranial bones. Yeah, this is the cranial bones, so this would be the cranium, and then the facial bones, which is the bones that makes up the face. So the cranial bones, you've got the vault, and then that's where the brain sits in. So if we open this in here, this bone protects or houses the brain, but then it's connected, if you look at that end in here, with the vertebra. The vertebral bones, you've got the top neck bones, which are the cervical bones. So you can see them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cervical bone. And then we've got the 12 thoracic bones. Yep. So after the neck bones, we then have the 12 thoracic bones. Yep. Then obviously we've got the sacrum bones, yeah, which are the fuse bones, and then the coccyx. So this is where your bottom will be, where you sit on. Yep. Now moving on for that, this is your scapula, which is basically called your shoulder blades. And as you can see, we've got two of them. Yeah, the shoulder blades. So we've got your humerus, yeah, which is your arm bone. The humerus got the head, yeah, which is fit up into that cavity in there from the scapula to form the glenoid cavity from the scapula to basically form the shoulder joint. So this is the scapula, which is your shoulder blade. Inside, at the side of the scapula, you've got your glenoid cavity, which is where the head of your humerus fits in to form the shoulder joints. Yeah. Again, you've got your clavicles, which are the neck bones. Again, they form into the glenoid cavity, the top of the glenoid cavity that helps with the shoulder joint. And then you've got your humerus. This would be the shaft of the humerus. And this would be where your humerus joins with your ulna and your radii, which are these twin bones in here. So this would form your elbow joints. Yeah. And then obviously you've got your carpals, which forms your wrist joints with the lower part of your ulna and radius. And then you've got your metacarpals, and then your phalanges really. So that's your upper extremity. But coming on to this top, this bad boys on here, which are your thoracic cavity. So remember we talked about it's made up of like your clavicles. So these are the two clavicles on there. And then you've got your sternum, which is this bone running through the middle of your chest in there that's housed and protects the organs of the thorax as well. But again, this sternum, what it does is like it's got extension of cartilages that joins the ribs as well. So you've got the ribs, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You've got 10 ribs, and then you've got 2 floating ribs. So a floating rib just means it's not attached to the sternum or attached to anything. You can see these 2 ribs, they're just floating. But then you can see the true ribs. The true ribs, they are the ribs that are attaching directly to the sternum. And then the false ribs are the ones that are attached. There's like a double connection to the cartilages for it to get to the sternum. And then you've got the 2 random lonely guys in here, the 2 floating ribs, which are just there. So organs that would be contained in here would be like your lungs. Your lungs will sit here at both sides. You've got your heart that will sit just right there as well. So now if we move downwards to the abdominal cavity, which is basically really empty, just guarded by the back of the vertebral cavity really. So these are areas where your abdominal organs would sit in. Now the bad boy is the pelvic. Key thing to remember is like the male pelvis is more narrower than the female pelvis. So obviously the female pelvis needs to be more broader because it does accommodate childbirth and stuff like that. But anyways, this is your pelvic. So it's made up of these bad boy bones and is joined in here by a little cartilage called the symphysis pubis. We'll discuss how important this symphysis pubis is because you can see how soft it is, and it's the part of the bone that would open and separate. You need to have that flexibility to aid childbirth especially. And if we're moving downwards from the pelvic cavity, we've got the pelvic bone, and then we've got the acetabulum. Apologize, I called it the glenoid. The glenoid is for the shoulder. This is meant to be the acetabulum. So this is the acetabular cavity. Yeah, it's just a cavity, a hole on the pelvic bone at both sides. And its purpose is that the head of the femur, which is the thigh bones, fit into this cavity to form the hip joint. So acetabular cavity or acetabulum, head of the femur, and then obviously you've got the femur in here, which is the thigh bones, but then it needs to join in between with the tibia and fibula. So these are the tibia and fibula, which are the bones of your lower legs. But then in between is your patella, this little bad guy in here, rounded bone. This patella is basically what joins the other of the bones to form your knee joint. So again, you've got your foot bones, which are your tarsals, your metatarsals, and again your phalanges. So yes, this is the overview of the skeletal system, and I suppose or hope this has been able to give you a perspective of what it looks like in reality. So thank you very much, and I hope you've learned something today. All right, that is it for today. I hope with Bob being a very, very good patient or illustration, I hope you've been able to learn a lot from today's section. So thank you to Bob, and thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you next time. Bye. Just want to get a picture, Bob. So cheese.
For more simplified nursing content, be sure to follow us. Don't forget to like the video if you found it helpful. And subscribe to our channel for more great content.